David Cameron will suggest changes to a proposed emergency break on in-work benefits for EU migrants when he meets the European Council President later. EU officials have suggested Britain could use the break for up to 4 years, but would have to prove public services were under excessive strain. It could be imposed within 3 months of the UK applying, if EU states agree. But Mr. Cameron will tell Donald Tusk he wants the break in force straight after the EU referendum, with no time limit. The pair are meeting at Downing Street to finalise a package of measures to put to EU leaders ahead of a summit between 18 and February 19. Big beasts. Eurosceptic Tory MP Steve Baker, chairman of Conservatives for Britain, said an emergency break on welfare payments to EU migrants is a red herring. Speaking to Andrew Neil on the BBC's Sunday Politics, he said, "We think it's undeliverable. I think that they've ended up trying to manufacture the appearance of success out of very little." Mr. Baker said he expects between 50 and 70 Conservative MPs to campaign for a vote to leave the EU and that he's prepared at this point to go into the campaign without any cabinet big beasts. Some Leave campaigners are hoping big names such as Theresa May, Boris Johnson, or Michael Gove will join their campaign when the date is announced. Mr. Cameron has said cabinet ministers will be free to campaign to leave the EU, but he is expected to ask them to back whatever he wins from renegotiations. Former Defence Secretary Liam Fox urged cabinet members considering joining the Leave campaign to ignore the false concept of party loyalty. He told BBC Radio 4's The World this weekend MPs should make the decision that is right for their country, not what is right for them. He has said if cabinet members are forced to adopt positions with which they are instinctively unhappy, it will be more difficult to overcome acrimony after the referendum. Stopgap. As part of his attempts to renegotiate the UK's membership of the EU, Mr. Cameron had proposed denying in-work benefits to all EU migrants until they had been in the UK for 4 years. He said stopping those migrants from claiming tax credits, income supplements paid to those in low-paid work, would reduce high levels of immigration to the UK. Some Central European nations are against the plan, however, saying it is discriminatory towards their citizens. EU leaders rejected Mr. Cameron's plan and proposed the emergency break as an alternative, to break the deadlock in the EU renegotiations. The proposed break, full details of which have not been confirmed, would allow any EU state to deny in-work benefits to new arrivals for up to 4 years, but only after proving services were under strain and securing the approval of a majority of other EU states. Mr. Cameron said the current proposal was not good enough. He is expected to tell Mr. Tusk the break must come into force immediately after the UK's referendum on EU membership, and must remain in place long enough to stem EU migration to the UK. Mr. Cameron will also say the break should be seen only as a stopgap while a more permanent solution is found. The PM will tell Mr. Tusk he is prepared to delay the referendum, which has been promised by the end of 2017, until he is satisfied with the deal on offer. As well as restricting access to benefits, Mr. Cameron wants extra powers for national parliaments to block EU legislation, measures to protect non-Euro states and exemption for Britain from the EU's ambition for ever closer union. Stephen Booth, CEO Director of think tank Open Europe, which campaigns for reforms in the EU, said there were question marks over how the emergency break would work, and who would control it. He said, "If it's felt that this break is not under UK control, it's questionable how much it's worth."